The church path under the yews, where, on certain nights, the living step aside without knowing why. Some processions do not wait for daylight. He was a bell ringer by habit and temperament, punctual, steady, fond of order. On Thursdays, he crossed the meadow to the church under the yews and pulled the rope with the satisfying weight that makes a man feel moored to his place in the world. He liked the sound of the bell, gathering the village into a single thought. One Thursday in early autumn, he stayed too long oiling the mechanism and came out after dark. Mist lay in the meadow like breath on glass. The path from the lich gate to the lane ran pale as bone between the stones. He shut the heavy door, pocketed the key, and heard, far off at first, feet. Not many, not hurried, the measured tread of men who know the way. He stepped back instinctively to let them pass. No lanterns showed on the lane, no talk, no cough, no clatter of harness. Only the quiet trample of burdened steps and the faint, dry whisper of cloth. They came into view by not quite becoming visible. 6 shapes bore a weight between them, level and careful. A 7th walked ahead. The ringer's hand found the gatepost and held on. As they reached the lich gate, he bowed his head because one does that, and they went by. He looked after them and saw, for an instant, not the men at all, but the space they made, as if the night itself had been carved into a solemn shape and was passing through the gate. Then they were gone. He heard them on the path and then not at all. Inside the church he found nothing disturbed. He laid the key on the sill and smiled at himself, though the smile did not travel far. At home his wife listened, put down her mending and said, "Who is it for?" "For the procession," she said, as if discussing weather. "It always walks the night before. Tell me in the morning who it was." He slept badly. In the morning, the baker's boy took a crust to the dog and told them, name, age, house by the bridge. A good death, people said, by which they meant expected. That evening the bell tolled slow and real. The ringer pulled the rope with tears he did not try to hide. He watched the living carry their neighbor under the same arch the shadows had used the night before. The measure was exact. Thereafter he listened. On some Thursdays, the path was only a path. On others, he stepped aside and removed his hat. Once, when the fog lay thick, he walked a pace behind the shapes toward the gate, as if his legs had borrowed a memory. He felt the cool of the stone as he passed beneath, and something like gratitude pinch his throat. The oddest night came in a clear frost. Stars cut sharp above the yews. He had finished his practice early and stood outside the porch to breathe the cold when the procession turned into the path from the lane with iron certainty. The leader paused at the gate, paused as if counting, then lifted a hand and changed direction, not into the churchyard, but around it, along the hedge, to a place where ivy hid a small old door that had been walled up longer than anyone remembered. He followed as far as he dared. They passed the walled door without slowing, as water passes a stone, and the bell ringer felt the gate under his fingers though he had not touched it. In the morning he brought the sexton and showed him the ivy and the old curve of the arch under it. "Family door," the sexton said, "sealed in the troubles." "Which family?" The sexton shrugged. "The ones who don't need doors." He grew older, his hands grew stiff. He taught a younger man to set the stay and catch, to hear the timing in his bones. He said nothing to the young man about the Thursday tread. He did not have to. On the boy's third practice evening, cold with nerves and pride, the lad stepped aside without meaning to and stood with his cap in both hands while nothing continued past him with solemn care. Afterwards the boy said only, "Right," and the old man nodded, warmed by being understood without telling. One night he heard 2 processions, one on the path, one in the lane, like 2 thoughts arriving at the same conclusion by different roads. He stood between them with his hat pressed to his chest, and the air in the shape of men flowed around him as gently as a river parts around a stepping stone. He told his wife, and she said, "It is a kindness. The world is busy by day, at night it sets its house in order." They grew quiet together after that, in the good way long-married people do. The last time he heard it, he did not step aside in time. His leg had begun to drag, the bone did what age asks of it. He had lingered too long putting the rope in its coil and misjudged the distance to the gate. The leader, if it was a leader, did not break the pace. A coolness like river fog brushed his chest and passed through him without injury or apology. He felt himself measured and not found lacking. He went home carefully, sat in his chair, and told his wife he had been counted. She folded his hand in both of hers and said, "Then you will not be lost." In the morning, the village woke to frost on the grass and a silence that was not empty. The bell tolled once, twice, and then many times, properly as it should. The younger man rang it. The old ringer listened from his chair by the window and smiled as if the sound were still attached to his hand. "If you pass the church after dark and feel yourself step aside, think nothing of it. Some roads are walked early to spare the day its sadness. Hats off at the lich gate, the favor will be returned." The bell had its habits too. The old ringer knew the note where the village's roofs began to hum in sympathy. He could feel it through the soles of his boots when the floor of the ringing chamber joined in like a bass at the back of a choir. He oiled the bearings himself and listened with his cheek to the wood, the way a carter listens to a wheel before taking a long road. That winter, he took to carrying a little lantern with a smoke glass, not to light his way, the path knew him, but to tip sideways when the tread approached, so that its weak flame showed him nothing while convincing his hands that he'd tried. Sometimes he fancied he heard more than feet, the soft tick of a ring on a coffin board, the brush of a sleeve, once the small decisive creak of a leather strap being taken up by men who would not drop their friend. On the frost-clear night when the cortege bent around the sealed door, he felt the meaning of it like a word on the back of his neck. "There are ways," the knight said, "and there are old ways. Both are kept." He stood very still until the feeling passed, and afterwards he found his eyes wet, not with fear, but with the odd comfort of having been included.